Hi, and welcome to another edition of Social News Interviews. My name is Eric E. Rock Christopher. I'm going to be your host for today, and we're super excited to bring you another amazing interview, someone who's here that is doing some amazing things in the world of technology and user testing and website and internet usability. So we've got an amazing interview with the CEO and founder of TryMyUI.com, Ritvij Gautam. Hi, how are you doing today, Rit? Is it okay if I call you Rit?
Yeah, that's fine. Everyone calls me Rit. Hi, Eric. It's so nice to be here. I'm so glad that you can have me on your show, and I'm excited to tell you a little bit about what I'm doing.
Well, why don't we get started with that? Tell us a little bit about you, your background, and kind of how you started the whole concept of TryMyUI.com.
Absolutely. So I was a physics and philosophy dual major at Claremont McKenna College, which has absolutely nothing to do with user interface and usability design. And really what kind of put me onto that track was I did an internship at Lam Research. I was working at their global quality department and working on their intraweb because they just merged with another company and they were restructuring their intraweb. And I was in charge of redesigning that for them, albeit on SharePoint, but I was in charge of redesigning it for them. And there were a lot of really interesting challenges that came up during that process. Namely, one of the biggest ones was there was many different departments who were going to use the same intraweb, and I had to spend time interviewing and talking to each of them to get their specs and get their needs. And the problems that each of them encountered was completely different because they were looking for different things in the site and they had different user experiences. They were all different, unique users. And I had to take into account how each of them would react and use my site and my intraweb design. So that's kind of what pushed me in the direction of, well, different people deal with websites differently, and different websites are usable to different extents to different people. So I need to and I was like, there has to be an easier way than just spending tons of man hours just interviewing all these people. So that kind of pushed me in the direction of TryMyUI. And then there were a whole bunch of happy accidents that led us to actually getting the company off the ground. And now we're here. We've been at it for a year and a half, and we're pushing the envelope in terms of new usability testing technology.
Well, excellent. Well, that's kind of a lot of experience, and being able to actually, build your business off that experience. And now that you've launched, and you said you've been in business, I believe you said it's about 3 years now, correct?
A year and a half.
Oh, I'm sorry. So, well, congratulations in advance when you go another year and a half. So I guess you could kind of say you're a little bit still in the startup phase, or tell me if I'm wrong, but what were some of the biggest challenges that you faced over the last 18 months being in business?
Well, there were very real challenges. Well, the industry we entered, the usability testing industry, while it is new and nascent and kind of fledgling, there are competitors who've been in the space a lot longer than us, and they have a lot more market share. So kind of getting our name out there and kind of eking out a space for ourselves that's one challenge every upcoming startup faces. And then secondly was just there's so many different kinds of data that you can provide for this particular service, and you have to at some point need to draw a line and stick to a core message and a philosophy of, well, these are the five kinds of data I'm going to provide, and I'm going to make sure that they're integrated and intermingled in giving you the insight. So we didn't just want to be a data collection tool. We wanted to become a practical platform on which you could not only collect your data, but analyze it, get your insights, and implement them in your product. And that has been the biggest challenge, defining what that is and achieving it and realizing it.
So with that said, I'm assuming over the last year and a half, you've had an opportunity to try to figure out who your target demographic is in terms of who's an ideal candidate for your software, your services. So what's the prototypical or ideal candidate who can benefit from your services? And then also, who would not be a good candidate for your program?
Well, so the platform we've designed it so that it's usable for everyone. Because I am of the belief that if you have a website or if you have a web product or a user interface, you should be testing it for usability. So in that vein, everyone with a user interface or everyone with a website is a good candidate for my solution. And this has been proven because we've had big companies like NBC Universal or Priceline test with us. And at the same time, we've had this lady who had a website where she sold paintings of other people's pets, and she tested with us too. And we cover the whole spectrum. And I guess the who isn't just by process of elimination is if you don't have a website, or if you don't have some sort of user interface tool, a tool with a user interface, then we really can't help you. I guess that's kind of the long and the short of it. But I will also say this: in terms of being a good candidate for the solution, there's also a spectrum on that. The amount of benefit that we could provide for you. If you just have say a blog, or just like a plain a single page with a bunch of content on it, we could the benefit we could provide you. There is benefit, but it would be marginal, as opposed to if you had a complex sales funnel, or if you had an e-commerce site where your people are coming through. At that point, we can really give you a lot of benefit, because your bottom line, your revenue is directly impacted by how usable your site is and how easy it is for people to go through your site and convert at the end.
Awesome. Well, thanks for sharing that. And with that said, you talked about the importance of, user testing, in terms of more of the sales funnel type of things. Why would you say in today's age of digital marketing that user testing is so important?
Well, it's interesting, right? Because people today and this has been over time. There's been a development, like with the .com boom, the .com bust, and the rise of social media. All of that, people have become less patient. Very honestly, if I go to a website, I'm looking for something. I want it. I want to be able to access it very quickly without wasting a lot of my time. And it would be fine if you were the only site that provided what I was looking for, right? Then I'm going to invest the time equity to go and figure out what I want and plod through your site, regardless of how good or bad your UI is. But if you have competitors, as most people do, you're in a competitive space, I'm going to go and look for the guy who can provide me what I want the fastest, easiest way with the least barrier to entry. The most usable thing is what I'm going to look for. And that's why it's super important today, because at the end of the day, you are not the website you design. You're not designing it for yourself. You're designing it for your economic buyer or your customer or your target user. And you need to make sure that it's usable for them. Otherwise, you might have potentially the greatest service in the world, but if your target user can't use it, it's worthless.
So with that said, obviously you're talking about, let's say, existing businesses that are, have up and running websites or applications. But what about, for example, the applicability of TryMyUI in your service for people who are doing maybe website redesigns, or for web developers who are trying to, make sure that their design and the development of their website is up to speed, and could that give a web developer an advantage over other companies who aren't offering a similar type of service?
So if I understood your question correctly, I think you're asking me, well, what about someone who's updating an existing design? Was that is that what that's about?
Yeah, sure. So let's say, for example, that I own a company and I go out and I hire somebody to retool my website and to, and implement maybe a new design or add some new technology to my website that can help me to, provide a better functionality, better experience. Would you say that if someone who owned a web design or web development company could benefit by adding TryMyUI as a potential service to kind of identify bottlenecks and provide, better feedback, so when they get done with the project, it's a better functioning site, a better usable site?
Absolutely. So, and you brought a good point, right? That we have two profiles of customers. We have people who have their own products and companies like that, and then we have agencies and web design shops and development shops who have many customers, and they're working on different products for redesign. And I think there's a lot of value we can provide, and we do provide for agencies, because one big thing when you're redesigning an already existing site or retooling it is you need to be able to demonstrate the value of what your input is to the customer, right? You can say, hey, I changed the login flow. I removed these 2 pages. I added this little widget. right? But to really demonstrate the value to the customer, you need to make them see how much more usable the site is, or what has changed in the fundamental user experience of their site by your input. And TryMyUI is phenomenal at demonstrating that. And not only that, if you take it one step prior, it can help you with your research, because you can run tests on their site already to see what is the existing site's biggest pain points, right? What's messing up? Where are the target users of the site messing up, or where are they falling off? And now you can pick up from that, use that as raw data to build your to do some serious objective-based design, and build on top of that and build some great features. And I've seen this more anecdotally, where customers are very resistant to change, right? You love your site. It's almost like your child, and they're resistant to change. So it's great to show people real users kind of tripping up on their site, and real users encountering these pain points and struggling with them. And when the customer sees it not coming from you as your opinion, but sees it more established as a fact, where they're seeing their target user messing up, and not just one person, but 2, 3, 4 people messing up on the same place or hitting that same pain point, that makes the opinion transcend from opinion to fact, and it makes it very easy for you to green light changes and for customers to understand where you're coming from and understand your suggestions. So yes, there is a lot of value we have provided and can provide for agencies and dev shops.
Excellent. Well, thank you for sharing your wisdom on that. So obviously you talked about some of the challenges that maybe a small business owner or even an enterprise company might face in terms of dealing with change. But as an overall industry, in terms of usability testing, have you got everyone at your company at TryMyUI.com, have you identified what are some of the bigger challenges that need to be overcome in terms of using and implementing usability testing?
Absolutely. So, and this is kind of, I kind of spoke about the philosophy we needed to have, and that being one of our biggest challenges. And this kind of follows from that. The biggest challenge with usability testing, hands down, is that it's a very time-consuming activity. And that's just because of the nature of the data. It's video data, and it becomes very clunky very quickly. And by that I mean, if you run 10 tests at 30 minutes each, or you get 10 users going through your site, and each of their sessions are around 30 minutes, you're already looking at 300 minutes of video that you have to watch, rewatch, extract insights from, and usually you're working with many people. It's not just you. You have a team of people, so you need to share your insights with the team, and the team's probably going to watch some of the videos, have their own insights and have their own findings, and then you have to collate all that data, come up with a concrete action items list, and have it probably green lighted by the product manager if you're a bigger company, or the VP of product, and then have it implemented by the dev team. And this is all well and good if you had an infinite amount of time on your hands, but you don't. You're working to a deadline, and it's either a sprint deadline towards your next sprint or your next build, or your client's deadline because you're working as an agency for a client. And both of those cases, you have this time constraint to deal to mine through this large clunky video data, and that's the key challenge with usability testing.
Well, awesome. Thanks, Rit. I appreciate you sharing that. And so, if you're watching this, right, we're interviewing Rit Gautam from TryMyUI.com, if you're just joining us as a new viewer. And so one of the things that I'd like to do, Rit, is kind of put you on the spot, if that's okay, right? You can't expect us to not throw you a few curveballs during an interview.
Absolutely.
But I think maybe a lot of people that might be watching this are having a challenge in terms of visualizing a little bit about what your service actually provides or what your software actually does. And would it be okay if you might be able to, kind of take us through a quick tour through your kind of interface, right? And give us some examples of of how your system would work or benefit the users.
Absolutely. Hold on, let me. Yeah, I think the challenge is usually these demos take longer, but I think I'll be able to show you the essence of what we have going on here.
I'm sure that there's probably a very robust solution to what you're doing, and just so you know, we can see your screen great on the screen share. So go ahead and I'll let you take over and just kind of, I guess, help the viewers of our program get a better sense of what your service can provide.
Absolutely. So as you can see here, this is kind of what you would see if you were a customer at TryMyUI. You can run many tests. We have a pool of testers, about 250,000 strong, and we've demographically curated them. So you can go into this pool, find your target customer base, and run tests against them. Have them go through a set of tasks on your site, and you'll get a video and audio recording of it. So this is a simple system where you can create different tests, and it's a cross-platform system, so you can create tests for your desktop, you can create tests for your phone, and you can see how many users have picked it up, how many you requested, how many have picked it up, how many have completed it, how many are in progress, etc. And then you can create folders to group many tests. And here's something I want to talk about that's really key, is, like I said, you're working in a team, and it's very important for you to be able to share your findings with your team, and often your team has to engage with this data as well. And one big choke point is when there's one interpreter of the data, and they go through the trouble of watching all the videos and collating all of their data, but when they go from there and they have to relay these insights to the team, that's a big choke point, and there's a lot of time that gets wasted there because people need to be brought up to speed on your findings. And we've kind of helped circumvent that, so you can share your tests, and you can share your tests and folders with team members. This account only has 2 team members, but you can have as many as you want, and you can share the certain tests with certain team members. And this works well for agencies, etc., because now you're not only working with your team, you're working with the team of another company, and now you can use this account to share certain tests with members of that other company, and it'll become easier for you to loop in your clients to your research. So here's what it looks like, the detailed view, when you deep dive into the site. So this is a simple e-commerce site we tested. We ordered 30 tests for it, and the average test time was about 20 minutes. So that puts us at about 600 minutes of video on average for this test site, which is a lot of video. And over here, you can see the videos, you can play them, download them, share them, get a share link if you only want to share 1 or 2 particular videos with people. And then the star rating is for us, because we make sure that our testers are constantly given the incentive to give you very actionable feedback. And by that, I mean, I don't care if my tester is terrible at using your site. I really do care that they're able to tell me exactly why they're terrible at using it. And that's what we screen for. And that's what this star rating is for. We make sure testers that score highly and are able to vocalize their feedback test more often and test with you. So like I said, this is a lot of video data. And so we give you the video and audio recording, and we also give you written post-test responses to these questions. You can ask questions post-test. These are some of the questions that this particular test included. You can ask whatever questions you want, and then you get the post-test responses. And this helps you contrast what I call the gaps in user experience, the gap between what the user sees, or like what the user intends to accomplish and what they actually accomplish. And you can see this gap between the tests you assign for them, as in the task you assign for them, and what they actually end up doing during the test. Then the gap between what the user thinks they're doing and what they're actually doing. And that's the gap. You can see that by you get an audio recording of the user as they're vocalizing their experience, but you also get a video recording of whatever they're doing on their screen. And many times you see there's incongruencies there where the user says or thinks they're doing something, right? They think they're logging in, or they think they're about to go to a certain page, but what they end up doing on their screen and where it takes them is completely different. And there's incongruencies there. And the last incongruency is between what the user actually did and what they remembered about what they did, and kind of how, like, their recall factor of what the actual user experience was. And that's what the written summary responses take you through. Then over here, we have but all of that is kind of still a lot of data. It's vanilla data. You're still stuck with 600 minutes of video and just a ton of text. Now, how do you convert this into meaningful insights? And this is where we really come in, and these are the tools we've chosen as a usability testing platform to help you delve and deep dive to find your insights. So this is an example of something that helps you benchmark your usability and then track it as you make iterative changes. There's this horrible stigma where people think usability testing is a one-time thing. Oh, I usability tested my website, I found some pain points, I made a change, and then I'm just going to keep going on. But you need to test again iteratively to make sure the changes you made impacted the usability the way you wanted it to. right? And this is something that's going to really help you if you're a product manager, or if you're someone who has your own product. You can see whether or not the changes you're making are having the intended effect on your website. And it really helps you if you're a worker from an agency, because now you can show your customer very clearly how the changes you've made to their UX have impacted their usability. And you can track this score thoroughly, and you can track it along vectors. You can see, well, how usable is it and how learnable is it for this system. But we have other systems that test, other survey models that test interface quality, information quality, and support quality, and stuff like that. So you can choose your vectors and test and benchmark them and track the usability as you make changes to the site. Then you can also see your task usability, and this is great because on a task-by-task basis, you can figure out what's bugging users and what's not. And when you see a spike in difficulty, in task difficulty, that'll give you the impetus to be like, aha, well, I see that the last 3 tasks on average have lower usability than the first few, and now I'm going to go and watch maybe the last 3 tasks in all user videos. So now you go from 600 minutes of video to maybe 100 minutes, but still that's a lot. And you want to kind of break that down. So now you can go look at the average task duration. You can see that there was a spike in difficulty in task 6, and now you can see, oh well, task 6 took a lot longer than all of the other tasks. So maybe I'm going to start by watching task 6 and pick up from there. So now again, you have more confirmation that, okay, well, of the 3 tasks that have lower usability on the task usability scale, task duration wise, task 6 took longer. So I'm going to start by watching task 6 for all users. So now maybe you've gone down to 50 minutes or 25 minutes. But still, we want to give you the ability to really narrow down these pain points and figure out exactly where users are tripping up, which is why we came up with the UX crowd. Now, what the UX crowd does is it treats the users as an intelligent base of people. And after users come in and take the test, we campaign for 3 things. What are 2 things you liked about the site? What did you not like about the site? And name up to 2 suggestions for improvement. And after users give their responses, we drop them into a forum where they can see the responses of other users, and they're given a certain weighted vote currency depending on when they join the group, etc. We have an algorithm for that. And then they are given the ability to vote up on other user suggestions that resonate with their own, and they're able to comment on it. So what you start seeing is a prioritized list, not only of, hey, these are all the pain points we have, but you're able to figure out which pain points are critical, which affected the most users. Right? Is this just a one-off instance, or did this affect all of my users on the base? Is this a problem I had across all the tester pool? And this gives you the ability to pick and choose the pain points that affected the most people and really do some realistic roadmap prioritization in terms of what issues to fix in time for your next sprint or next build or in time for your client deadline. So this is what it looks like. You can see over here, for instance, Michaela stated that she would not recommend a guest checkout for customers who do not want to provide their phone numbers or create an account. And this was a big choke point for this e-commerce site because they required customers to create an account. They had no guest checkout option. So what ended up happening is they had a lot of churn where people who actually wanted to buy their product ended up churning out from their sales funnel because they didn't want to create an account. And the purpose of this the purpose of creating an account was so that this company could have their email. But you can collect someone's email without having it phrased as an account creation. So this resulted in people really churning from the system. And then you can see it tracks here, because the biggest thing that people didn't like is that they didn't like how they had to create an account before checking out. But you can also see what people liked about your site. Right? Yeah, they liked the fact that it supported all these different causes, and they liked the patterns and the designs of the shirts. So you can see your strengths, you can see your weaknesses, and you actually get some ideas from your target customer in ways in which you can mitigate those weaknesses. And lastly, so we can move on, this is what it looks like when you actually view a test. When you view a test, you can watch the video here. Like I said, you get video and audio feedback of a person going through. And this helps you really encapsulate your aha moments. As you're watching it, I'm sorry, the frame rate's probably going to be pretty laggy, but as you're watching it, for instance, say you're somewhere here, you notice something, you can create a timestamped annotation. It'll capture the timestamp. You can write a quick description of it. You can describe it as, something like pattern unclear. And you can save that annotation with a tag where you can talk about front end, or or design, for instance. And what's great is after you save it, you can go back and jump to that timestamp whenever you want. And also, if you notice here, you can see that there's more people who've created annotations on the site. This is where you and your team can access the data together. And you can now sort these annotations by author. You can sort them by tags. You can also just view all of them. And this really helps you not only bucket and categorize your research, but also bucket and categorize the research of your whole team. And you can call upon these tags across the videos, across all the videos. So now you've started bucketing your insights and your research. And this reduces the downtime, where instead of having a 2-hour meeting where you're like, hey, let me get you up to speed on my findings, you can just tell your teammate, go and look at the annotations I made under layout for this test. And they can go and do that. And now when they do that, you can go and see, oh well, these are all the issues, then these are all the annotations that they found, and you're looped into their research in real time. And that's a big thing that we've done that really helps you manage your usability testing research and kind of get around that challenge of having of it being a really time-consuming activity. Now you can go from not only from the data collection phase to encapsulating your insights, and now you can go from there to report generation as well. We have the ability for you to generate an executive summary where you can click and drag. You can choose the kind of summary you want, and then see all of your annotations here, click and drag them in, and create a beautiful report for you to get out there very easily. And that's kind of the short version of this demo. But it's, like I said, our focus has all been around taking this thing, which is a time-consuming activity, but very crucial to the success of your website, and making it more streamlined, where you can go from the raw data to insights and analysis to a prioritized action items list, or the prioritized list for implementation in your roadmap.
Amazing. So Rit, thank you for sharing all that. It looks like a very robust solution, and it looks like one of the things that you made it a point, like you'd mentioned, was to possibly streamline and reduce the time that it takes to take the information that's been gathered and actually implement it. And so one of the things I was thinking about watching this is it's almost kind of like an America's Got Talent or American Idol type of program, where you're putting your website voluntarily in front of some judges, and they're going to evaluate the performance of it and tell you what they like and they don't like. And that might be a great indicator. And, having the audience kind of vote about what they like and don't like, and, kind of, create a better performance as people go.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So obviously, here's an example of here's what the software does, but maybe can you share a quick story about how one of your clients or one of the users of your program actually made some changes? What kind of benefits did they get out of it? Do you have any kind of examples of success stories?
Absolutely. So we have different kinds of success stories, right? We have, for instance, we released a case study we did with the Bureau of Labor Statistics. And this is actually a really interesting story, because they had a very unique need. They didn't just have a website. They needed to test the usability of their surveys or how easy and accessible the surveys were. And this becomes a choke point, because how do you figure out how good a survey is? You can't send another survey about the first survey, right? Because that's turtles all the way down. So they were encountering this challenge of what we coined the term meta feedback, on how do you look at how effective your feedback mechanisms are. And usability testing is one tool that really helped them out, because now they were able to see testers take their surveys and vocalize problems they had about the content of the surveys, whether the questions were unclear or whether the options were inadequate, but also talk about the fatigue factor, whether or not testers were kind of missing the point, like as they went further down the surveys, were they tripping up or did they have issues with it, etc. And that's one big success story for them, because now they have a way to create more effective surveys and also see how effective these surveys are by watching the people they're ordering these surveys against take them. So that's one instance, and that's a kind of a unique use case. But a more common one, for instance, is our customer NBC Universal. They use us in the past to test the usability of Access Hollywood, their website, and that's a pretty interesting case because they cover the same content, right? Tomorrow, God forbid, if one of the One Direction members dies, like they're all the sites are going to cover it, but it's all about how it really hinges on usability in terms of how well you bring this content up to them and how accessible you make it to your user. So they used us to do some competitive analysis. Like you said, in America's Got Talent, you got to have competitors for it to be a true America's Got Talent. So they did a competitive analysis of their site against their biggest competitors. And at that point, they were able to figure out their key strengths and advantages they had over their competitors, and also a key weakness, and they were able to fix it very easily. And that's something that's a pretty good success story as well. So again, I apologize, I can't really go into a lot of detail about exactly the changes they made, etc., due to confidentiality. But yeah, that's kind of a success story we have too.
Yeah, I'm assuming, Rit, that you don't necessarily want the NBC Universal legal team deciding to investigate some of the information that you might reveal. But I think that's a very interesting point that you're making, is that the software isn't just designed, it can be just used for your own company. But I think a valuable point that you made was how it's able to actually help, kind of survey the landscape of the competition, right? So I think that's a great benefit. Now, one of the things that some people might say is like, well, I've got, like a business owner might say, well, I've got Google Analytics, or they might be using some sort of other software that they might think is similar, like maybe Hotjar or Crazy Egg for heat maps and things like that. How would you distinguish the difference between some of those other programs and what your service provides? Sure.
So, and that's a great question, right? And again, this is about different kinds of data. Stuff like Google Analytics, they're about telling you the what, right? And by that I mean they're able to tell you exactly which pages are performing well, which pages are performing poorly. You're able to see which pages have the most engagement, the least engagement, have a drop-off rate, etc. And that's great, because now you have an idea of, these are the pages of mine that work really well and convert people the way I want them to. These are the pages that don't. But at some point, you got to go in and figure out, well, why do the pages that don't convert not convert? And that's really where we help. The kind of data we provide is around helping you figure out exactly what's going through the mind of your target user as they're on that page. What made the user slip up? Is it because they couldn't see the button because you placed it in a place where they just glazed over it? Or is it because of some QA issue where they tried to convert and your system just broke down, right? What was the problem that people were having on your site? And also why you're able to figure out, why do the things that work, and you're able to replicate that as well. Users are very vocal about the benefits of your site. They'll say, hey, we love this feature, or we loved how easy this was, and you're able to take that into account as well. So now you're able to figure out what your strengths are, what your weaknesses are, and you're able to come up with a strategy to make your weaknesses go away and like fix them, and at the same time maximize on your strengths, so that users see more of this and are able to kind of engage with your strengths a little more, and that makes you a more usable site. And that's with Google Analytics, right? With stuff like heat maps, that data is more and more, it tends more towards heuristic evaluation, where it's kind of like a rule of thumb thing. So when I see a heat map, I can see a cluster of heat around like a certain button, and I can see like cold spots, etc. And my idea as well, I want to have heat spots around the places that I want people to click on, and that's the general sense, right? But it becomes challenging because the heat map by itself, while it's visually very interesting and very pleasing as a form of data, the ROI it has from going from data to insight is very little. It's hard for you to go from a heat map to, hey, this is why there is a cluster of heat around this place. You don't know if it's because of the kind of button you have, if it's just because of the real estate location of your website, or if it's because something your button said. There are many different things that can come into play, and you have to do a lot more research before and have like 10 or 6 different heat maps, right, before you can cross-reference them to come up with exactly why there was a heat spot in that area. And that's too much. I feel like that's too much time, or that's too inaccessible when you're in a time-driven environment. So we break the mold of heuristics, and we help you go directly to, hey, you don't have to guess at what this user is messing up on, because this user is going to tell you exactly why they're messing up. And you're going to listen to it. You might not like it, but you're going to know exactly why they're messing up. And that helps you go very quickly, and streamline your analytics to more concrete findings, and jump from there into implementation, fixes and implementation.
So thanks for giving us your insights on that. And so my next question is obviously you're collecting a lot of information, collecting a lot of data, and obviously with your program, you're trying to streamline that into, actionable items, but obviously you're collecting a lot of data, a lot of information. And so our researchers tell me that they did a little bit of investigation and found out you recently hosted a webinar that was titled, "Is Data Useless?" Right? Or "Data is Useless." So isn't that a little bit contrary to kind of like what your service is offering? I kind of found that as an interesting kind of dichotomy.
That's a great question. We did do a webinar called "Data is Useless," and the point of that, we actually started that webinar by talking a little bit about this poem called "The Rime of the Ancient Mariner." And there's a line in that poem that goes, "Water, water everywhere, nor any drop to drink." And that's a great line, because it's the same challenge you face when you're doing big data, and when you're dealing with essentially this veritable sea of data, right? It's just as crucial as water is for you to live, but the water around him, like the sea around the ancient mariner, right? It's all water, and potentially it's useful in that he could distill it, break it down, purify it, and then make it drinking water. But practically, because he doesn't have the methodology and the robust methodology to take that, and the apparatus to take that saline water from the sea and make it into potable drinking water, right? Just as he doesn't have that, it becomes practically useless to him. So our webinar was warning about the dangers of not having a robust analytical methodology and just collecting and hoarding data without a plan for what you hope to achieve from getting this data, and kind of almost a hypothesis of what this data is going to do, or what this data is going to present, the kind of findings it's going to present for your site, and what it means for your site. And that's kind of what the webinar was about. Data is, I guess the caveat is, data is practically useless without a robust methodology. And the webinar is all about how to have a methodology as such, and building a framework to help you easily analyze such data. And this holds especially true for video data and usability testing data, because it becomes a sea very quickly, right? If you run 10 tests, that's 30 minutes. So if I'm trying to run 20 tests or 30 tests, right, that becomes 600 minutes, 900 minutes of video very quickly. And now you're stuck because you have to try and analyze all of this in a time-efficient fashion.
Well, very interesting answer, right? Kind of some interesting insights there. And so another question that obviously I don't think that any entrepreneur, business owner, enterprise company would question the value of making their website or their applications or technology more useful for the user. I don't think that anybody would question the value of that. However, with marketing budgets being what they may, how would you recommend that if someone's, let's say, in a role to advise a company or a small business owner, how would you advocate that those companies invest budget towards usability testing versus, say, traffic generation, things like pay-per-click or search engine optimization?
So that's a great question, and this is something people push up against often. And the thing is, what I tell people is, look, there's two numbers, right? There's the people who show up on your site, and then there's your conversion rate. And those are the two numbers you play around with. The stuff like pay-per-click and SEO, etc., it really increases the top of your funnel. It increases the number of people showing up on your site. And that's amazing, and that's crucial, and you want that. But at some point, right, you can keep paying the marginal benefit of each additional dollar to keep getting people on your site is less and less. But the eventual bottleneck is decided by your conversion rate. And that's something you need to focus on, right? Because even if I have 1 million people on my site, but my conversion rate, my bottleneck is just that much, it's going to be problematic. So that way, if I have 1 million, 2 million people, this is the amount of people that get through this is going to be less and less, and at some point it's going to cap. So what usability testing helps you do is, after you get people on your site, it helps you figure out how easily do I take them from just my landing pages, right? How easily do I take them from there, and how accessible is it for them to go through the flow to the point where they convert and cash out, where it actually impacts my bottom line. And now that helps you grow this bit of your testing service. So now you might have a smaller number of people landing on your landing page, but more of them will be going through the funnel and through the flow. And that's really the two numbers you're playing around with. So I would say widening the bottleneck is just as important as jamming more things at the top of the funnel, because this helps you be more efficient with the conversions and with your sales funnel and with your budget. So and also, this is the kind of gift that keeps on giving, right? Once you've widened this, it's gonna and you might spend money on it once, it's gonna stay as usable, and that's gonna the benefit of that, you're gonna reap it over time. So it might so that's my pitch for asking people to invest in this also. I'm not saying in this instead of that, but it's just as important, right? It's the resources that come in, as well as how efficiently you deal with those resources. So you might have the money to pay for more resources, but if you can be more efficient at dealing with them and utilizing them, that's just as well. So now you become an efficient buyer and user of resources overall.
So I think I'm kind of getting a clearer picture of exactly kind of the value, and to maybe dilute this into something that might be a good, simple visual image. I don't know if this is the best analogy, Rick, correct me if I'm wrong, but couldn't it, basically I was picturing what you were saying about, how to bring it into the funnel. I was sitting there thinking, it's like a baby trying to put a square peg in a round hole. And what you're saying is TryMyUI could identify that problem for the users. And if I'm aware that my website looks like a circle, if I was to go and cut out and turn it into a square, then the baby could push through and it would fit, right? Making the website, that user experience, more enjoyable.
Yeah, that's a good analogy. Another analogy I use, just especially with the Iran nuclear deal just happening, is that it's kind of like nuclear reactor, right? You've built this reactor and you have this fuel that's coming in, but it all depends on how efficient your reactor is at processing this thing and getting energy from it, and then whatever's left over goes to waste, right? It becomes nuclear waste. And you want to build the best reactor possible. You're mining for your nuclear material, but you also want to build the best reactor possible, because now the yield you get per unit material, or per unit number of people coming into your site, right, per user, is a lot more. So now you make your dollar, your SEO dollar, the dollar you spent on SEO, count that much more, because now more people from that site or that investment are going to come into your very efficient website at taking people through the sales funnel, because it's super usable and has a phenomenal UX. It's going to have very little drop off and very little churn. And that's what we're all about. That's the analogy. It's fuel. The SEO and this thing is spending on fuel, but the UX is spending on making the most efficient engine possible.
So based on all the research that's being done in terms of marketing and advertising, there's an obvious huge shift from traditional advertising dollars and being invested into those channels into digital marketing, search engine optimization, pay-per-click, user testing, conversion rate work. But with that being said, from your position and at the high level of companies that you've worked and consulted with in the past, what do you see being some of the future trends of digital marketing?
Well, I mean, you kind of already see it, right? There's this idea of targeting, and targeted advertising, as well as in a way, like advertising that doesn't break the mold of the platform the person's on. So, I mean, you can see Facebook doing it with their mobile app install ads and stuff like that, where it's just in the flow of the UI you're dealing with. And you can see UI is a big function in that. You don't want the ad to be seen as interrupting a person's experience or interrupting a person's goal, but you want to try and integrate it seamlessly. So digital marketing is going to go more and more towards making these ads more organic to the user. Firstly, more relevant to the user, because it's going to be more targeted, and also more organic because it's going to be seamless with the user experience the user is dealing with as they kind of encounter this ad. So in that sense, I would say my role as like a usability testing platform is coming a big way, because it helps people see, hey, are ads augmenting my user experience, or are they hindering it? Because ads can be, I mean, ads today, I mean, the commonplace is viewed as a nuisance. But if ads are giving me exactly what I'm looking for, if they put something I'm looking for in front of me and they put it in a way that doesn't really interrupt what I'm trying to do, that's actually a benefit. So ads can augment a user experience. And the way you see that is test the usability of your site and see, hey, you can A/B test your ads. You can, pick different kinds of ads and see how users react to them. And you don't need to do it with an expensive focus group and take a bunch of man hours and like buy a lab. You can just run some usability tests remotely, and then that way you have people encountering these ads and giving you feedback on them in their candid environment, user experience environment, from their homes, on their computers or laptops, and you can see how they talk through it and how they intercept these problems and deal with them. And that's something that's invaluable. So I think the future of digital marketing is going towards making ads and making marketing content more seamlessly integrated with a general user experience. And I will also say this, like, and this is kind of the detractor from that. I'd say that one place where it shouldn't be happening is on news sites and stuff, because that's like people are going there to find out about world affairs, and spot like native advertising usually skews, like blurs the boundaries between news and ads, and that's something that's a moral gray area. But otherwise, on social media websites, on other companies' websites, on your blog, on content-driven websites, that's a great thing to do, and digital marketing is moving in that direction.
Well, excellent, and I appreciate your insights and offering the distinction between native advertising and confusing and blurring the lines with news and advertorials. So that I appreciate you making that distinction. And so as we wrap up here today, Rit, is there anything else that you would like to add?
I would just like to say user experience is something. If you have a website, something you should be concerned about. A common excuse is, hey, I would love to do usability testing. I would love to test my usability, but I just don't have the time. And tools like TryMyUI are working tirelessly to make that easier for you, because this is something crucial to the success of your website. So I would say you want to test your usability so that you can become more efficient, so that you can convert more, reduce your churn rates, and really go the distance in terms of making your website the most successful it can be, and making your sales funnel, for instance, yield the most it can possibly yield for you.
Well, awesome, Rit. I definitely appreciate your time today and having us let you interview you.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. And I have one more thing to say, if I can. We're always kind of generating content around the best practices of usability testing research, UX research, etc. You can check that out at blog.trymyui.com, or just check out our Twitter. Our Twitter usually at TryMyUI. We're putting out a lot of information on that. So yeah, I look forward to hearing back from you soon, and thank you so much for having me on your show.
Awesome. Thank you again, Rit, for being with us today. Once again, my name is Eric E. Rock Christopher, host of another Social News Interviews. Stay tuned for the next episode, and we'll see you soon. Thank you so much for attending today. Bye-bye.